Starhaven Colony had always felt like a gentle dream floating above a dangerous universe. It hung quietly over the pale clouds of Jupiter's moon, held together by metal, hope, and the laughter of families who believed they had found a safe place to live. Lights glowed softly along the curved walkways, and children spent their days playing in zero-gravity parks where colorful rings spun around them like magic. Life moved in slow, peaceful waves, and most people believed nothing could ever disturb that peace. But dreams can break fast, and on one dark night, the sky above Starhaven split apart with a violent scream of energy. A huge warship, jagged like broken stone and blacker than space itself, ripped through hyperspace. Flames wrapped around its hull, and glowing red symbols of the Varkan Empire pulsed like beating hearts. Everyone knew that mark. Everyone feared it. The Varkan were a brutal alien race that conquered worlds, crushed resistance, and stole life wherever they landed. They were known for taking prisoners, destroying cities, and forcing whole populations into chains. As the ship appeared, Starhaven's alarm sirens erupted across the colony, sending waves of panic through every home and corridor. Lights flashed red. Children cried. Adults grabbed emergency masks, hoping to reach shelters before the worst arrived. The ground trembled as massive Varkan dropships slammed onto landing platforms and tore through the colony's shields. Metal groaned under the heavy impact. Soldiers in bone-plated armor marched out with weapons glowing a sickly green. Their deep, rough voices echoed across the walkways, hunting for easy targets. Inside the central security shelter, Captain Mara Hale watched everything through a cracked screen. She was a strong, sharp-eyed soldier with years of battle behind her, and she had seen war enough times to know when a disaster was unfolding. But even she felt her stomach twist at the sight of the Varkan tearing through Starhaven's defenses like paper. People were being pushed aside, dragged out, terrified. She tapped through the camera feeds, searching for where she could help first, and then she froze. One screen showed a school pod sealed by emergency lockdown. Inside were 10 small children trapped against the walls with nowhere to run. Outside, a squad of Varkan warriors were cutting through the door with glowing blades that melted the metal like soft wax. The children had no chance. Mara felt something harden inside her. She had fought for years, but some things hit deeper than any battle plan or rulebook. Not children. Not like this. She grabbed her rifle, strapped on her armor with shaking hands, and sprinted out of the shelter while the colony shook around her. Smoke drifted through halls. Sparks fell from broken ceilings. The sharp smell of burning metal filled the air as she pushed through fallen beams and shattered windows. Her boots slammed the ground in furious rhythm. She did not slow, did not hesitate, and did not allow fear to touch her. She knew the Varkan were strong, larger than any human, but she also knew humanity did not surrender when something worth fighting for was on the line. As she reached the school pod corridor, explosions echoed behind her. She pressed herself against the wall, peeked around the corner, and saw the enemy still carving through the door. The kids were screaming inside. Without a second thought, Mara reached for her gear and muttered to herself, "Not today." She moved forward, ready to face monsters, ready to risk everything. Ready to fight not for orders, but for the only reason humans had survived this long. They protected their own. While Captain Mara Hale pushed through the broken halls of Starhaven, far above the colony another mind was watching everything with cold anger and growing excitement. General Thrax, leader of the Varkan invasion force, sat on his massive command throne in the heart of his flagship. The throne itself was made from dark metal carved into sharp edges, and it rose from the center of the command deck like a dark mountain. Around him, dozens of screens floated in the air, showing the chaos spreading through the human colony below. Thrax was a towering creature, 8 feet tall, his body covered in thick bone plates and scars from 100 battles. His eyes glowed like molten gold, and every breath he took sounded like grinding stone. To him, Starhaven was not a home filled with families. It was a tool, a weak place that would break easily, allowing him to teach the humans a lesson about fear. He believed fear was the best way to win. When his soldiers took young ones from any species, he knew the adults would surrender faster, losing hope, losing strength. As he studied the screens, he hissed to his officers, "Do not destroy the small ones. Take them alive." Humans tremble when their children are in danger, and a trembling enemy is easy to control. His officers bowed, accepting his cruel strategy without question. Thrax leaned forward, watching one feed more closely. It showed a school pod door slowly melting under Varkan cutting blades. Inside, frightened children huddled against the back wall. The sight pleased him. He imagined the fear spreading through the colony as word moved from parent to parent. He imagined humans kneeling, begging, giving up their defenses. That was how the Varkan built their empire, through the fear of others. But while Thrax was confident, Marahale had no intention of letting his plan succeed. She reached the pod just in time, blowing open its side panel and guiding the terrified children into the safety of her arms. They clung to her, whispering their fears. She told them they would survive. She told them she would get them out. And she meant every word. She led the group into maintenance tunnels, choosing the narrow paths where large Varkan soldiers would have trouble following. As she moved, she kept her voice calm and steady. "Stay close. Do not look back. Trust me." One child, a small girl with a trembling voice, looked up at Mara and asked, "Are the monsters coming?" Mara nodded once. "Yes, that's why we keep moving." She knew she had to think fast. Communications were dead. Reinforcements were too far away. She alone was responsible for these children now. Her training guided her steps, but something deeper guided her courage. Every time the wall shook from impacts above, she tightened her grip on her rifle and pushed forward. Eventually she found a place to rest, an old cargo hangar no one used anymore. Dust covered the crates. Lights flickered weakly. It was not safe forever, but it was safe for a moment. She had the kids crouch behind old containers while she scouted the area. What she did not know yet was that inside this forgotten place lay something that would change the entire battle, a secret she had not expected, and one that would soon make the Varkan general panic in a way he had never panicked before. But for now she only knew one thing. She had to protect the children no matter what came next. The sound of distant footsteps echoed somewhere outside the hangar, reminding her the enemy was still close. She steadied her breath, tightened her grip, and prepared herself for whatever she would have to face to keep those kids alive. Captain Marahale moved carefully through the dusty cargo hangar, guiding the frightened children to a corner where stacks of old crates could hide them for a short time. The hangar was large and dark, filled with the smell of rust and old fuel, the air humming with distant explosions from outside. Once, long ago, this place had been used to store supplies for traders passing through Starhaven, but now it stood forgotten, with broken equipment lying in shadows and screens that no longer worked. Mara thought they had a moment of safety here, but she also knew it would not last long. The Varkan soldiers were relentless, and they would sweep through every part of the colony until they found what they were searching for. As she helped the kids settle behind the crates, she noticed something strange. One of the crates was not shaped like the others, and when she brushed her hand across its surface, she realized it was not a crate at all. Instead, it was an old stasis pod, dusty and cracked, with weak lights flickering on its control panel. Someone must have abandoned it years ago, maybe smugglers or travelers who never returned to claim it. Curious and cautious, Mara wiped more dust from the surface, and then she froze. Inside the dim, foggy glass lay a small figure curled up tightly. It was an alien child, thin, trembling, with grayish skin and large, dark eyes. The moment she saw the face, Mara recognized what species it belonged to. It was Varkan, a Varkan child hidden away in a broken pod on a human colony, completely alone. The human children behind her stared with wide eyes, unsure if they should be afraid or sorry. The alien child slowly opened its eyes and blinked at them, frightened but too weak to move. Mara hesitated. She knew exactly what would happen if the Varkan Empire discovered that she, a human captain, had found and taken one of their young. They would not just continue attacking Starhaven, they would destroy the colony down to its last piece of metal. The Varkan did not forgive anything involving their offspring. But she also knew one thing about herself and about her people. Humans did not leave children to die, not even enemy children. With a slow breath, she pressed the release button. The pod hissed open, and the Varkan child fell into her arms, trembling violently. It looked up at her with a small, frightened voice and whispered, "Please, do not let General Thrax find me." The name hit Mara like a blow. Thrax was the ruthless leader of this entire invasion, the one whose name made even brave human soldiers tense. She frowned and whispered, "Why would he be looking for you?" The child lowered its gaze. "Because he uses us. He hurts us when we fail. He makes us fight." I ran away. Before Mara could ask more, the hangar doors suddenly shook with a loud blast. The metal bent inward as a squad of Varkan soldiers smashed their way inside, their armor glowing, their weapons humming with energy. Their heavy footsteps echoed like thunder as they marched toward the center of the hangar. One soldier pointed straight at Mara and shouted, "Human captain! Surrender the children!" As the children gasped and clung to one another, Mara lifted her rifle and pushed them further behind the crates. But something even worse happened at that moment. High above, on his massive flagship, General Thrax was watching the battlefield through his scanners. When he saw the image of the human captain holding not only human children but a Varkan child, his eyes widened in disbelief and pure outrage. He stood so fast his throne shook. "What? They took who?" He roared, his voice cracking metal plates on the floor. Rage filled him like fire. "Find them, now!" In that moment, the battle changed, and the entire galaxy felt the shift. The hangar exploded into chaos as the Varkan soldiers stormed inside, their heavy boots slamming against the metal floor and their weapons glowing with deadly green light. Captain Mara Hale reacted instantly, shoving the children deeper behind the crates as she spun around with her rifle raised. The enemy warriors were huge, their bodies covered in thick bone armor that made them look like walking fortresses, and their eyes burned with the cruel excitement of the hunt. Mara fired first, her shots sharp and fast, hitting weak points in their armor that she had learned from years of fighting. A Varkan soldier roared and fell, but two more charged forward, their claws scraping sparks from the floor. The human children huddled together, covering their ears from the noise while the alien child stared out in fear and confusion. Mara moved like a streak of light, rolling behind a broken loader machine, firing from cover, and then sliding between crates to protect the area where the children hid. Laser blasts tore through the air, leaving scorch marks on the walls, and every impact shook dust loose from the rafters above. One massive Varkan warrior leaped over a stack of crates and swung a blade toward Mara's head, but she ducked and stabbed her knife between the creature's shoulder plates, driving it into a vulnerable spot. The creature howled and crashed to the ground. Without pausing, Mara pulled a stun grenade from her belt, snapped the pin off with her teeth, and threw it toward the largest group of attackers. "Eyes closed," she shouted, her voice slicing through the noise. The children squeezed their eyes shut, and a brilliant flash flooded the hangar. The stunned Varkans stumbled, clutching their heads, and Mara used the precious seconds to push toward a power panel on the wall. She slammed her hand against it, activating a half-broken cargo elevator that screeched to life. She turned back toward the children. "Everyone inside, move!" The human kids scrambled toward the elevator, tripping over each other but managing to climb inside. The alien child stood at the edge for a moment, looking torn between fear and guilt, then whispered, "If they see me with you, they will kill us all." Mara grabbed the child's hand firmly. "If you stay, they'll kill you. You're coming." The child swallowed and nodded. Just as the last child stepped into the elevator, the ceiling above them cracked open with a thunderous crash. A massive piece of metal fell away, revealing the night sky outside, and then a giant figure dropped down like a falling star, landing hard enough to shake the entire hangar. General Thrax himself had arrived. His armor gleamed with red lights, and his eyes blazed like molten fire. He towered over Mara, bigger than any Varkan soldier, his bone plates thicker, his muscles coiled with raw strength. He pointed a huge claw at Mara and growled, "You took what is mine." Mara raised her gun, her breath steady despite the fear twisting inside her. "I saved what you threw away," she answered. The alien child stepped forward, voice trembling. "General Thrax, please." "Stop." For the first time, Thrax hesitated, confused by the child's behavior. That tiny moment was all Mara needed. She slammed her palm onto the emergency blowout switch beside her. The hangar roared as a compressed shock wave burst outward, sending everything flying. The force hurled Thrax back into a collapsing support beam, burying him under metal. Mara dove into the elevator and hit the close button. As the doors shut, she yelled, "Go!" And the elevator shot upward, carrying the children to safety while the hangar behind them crumbled under the weight of a monster's rage. As the elevator carried Mara and the children upward, the entire colony shook under the force of the Varkan attack, and she knew the fight outside would be worse than anything inside the hangar. When the elevator doors opened onto the upper levels, the sight that greeted them was terrifying. Bright streaks of laser fire cut across the sky. Ships exploded like burning stars, and the colony's defensive towers were already falling in pieces. The air smelled of smoke and melted metal, and every few seconds the floor trembled as another blast struck somewhere nearby. Mara pushed the group forward, shouting for them to keep low as they ran along a slanted walkway that led toward the emergency launch bay. She could hear distant screams, radio static, and the roar of Varkan engines overhead. The children were exhausted, stumbling from fear and panic, but they kept moving, trusting Mara with every breath. When they reached the launch bay, the giant blast doors had already been destroyed, leaving an open view of the dark sky above. Inside the bay sat a small emergency frigate, old, scratched, and clearly not meant for battle, but still intact. Mara saw the spark of hope in the children's eyes and felt her own chest tighten with relief. She rushed to the ship's main hatch and started the boot-up sequence, which groaned and flickered like a tired animal waking from a long sleep. "Everyone inside," she ordered, and the children rushed in, clinging to seats and railings, their faces pale and frightened. The alien child hesitated at the doorway, looking out at the chaos, then turned to Mara with wide, uncertain eyes. "You can come too, right?" they asked softly. Mara nodded as she checked the controls. "I will, but I need to buy us a moment first." Before the child could answer, the sky above the bay darkened and a massive shadow descended. With a crash that sent sparks flying everywhere, General Thrax landed in the open bay, tearing through the broken metal like it was paper. He stood tall and furious, his armor pulsing with red light, his claws digging into the ground as he rose to full height. The blast from the emergency blowout had not stopped him for long. He stepped forward, growling deep in his chest, and pointed at Mara with a claw that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. "You can outrun human," he snarled. "You stole what is mine." Mara stepped away from the frigate door, rifle steady in her hands, though her arms shook from exhaustion. "I didn't steal anything," she said. "I rescued a child. Something you should have done instead of hunting them." The alien child stepped behind Mara, trembling but rising enough to speak. "General Thrax, please stop. Let them go." Thrax's eyes widened in rage. "Silence. You belong to the Empire." His voice cracked the floor beneath him. But Mara was already moving. She hit the emergency switch behind her, activating the bay's old shock wave barrier. The floor pulsed, sending a wave of force outward. The blast threw Thrax backward, slamming him against a half-collapsed support pillar. He roared in fury, struggling to push himself free, but the metal held him for a precious moment. Mara leaped back toward the ship and slammed her hand onto the launch controls. The hatch sealed shut, and the frigate's engines roared to life. "Hold on," she called as the ship lifted off, rising through the broken bay doors and shooting into the sky. Outside, the battle was raging. Dozens of Varkan fighters chased them, firing streams of deadly green lasers, but just as they closed in, human defense fleets warped into the system. Sleek human ships streaked through space, firing bright blue beams that cut through the Varkan swarms. Explosions lit up the darkness, and the human pilots fought with fierce skill, protecting the escaping frigate like a shield of fire. Mara watched in awe and exhaustion as the tide of battle began to turn. For the first time, the Varkan ship stumbled, retreated, and broke formation. Humanity was fighting back, and the sky was finally changing in their favor. The escape frigate drifted through a calmer stretch of space hours after the battle, its engines humming softly as it approached the human flagship Resolute, a massive ship shaped like a silver spear cutting through the darkness. Inside the frigate, the children were finally able to breathe without fear, though their faces still showed the shock and exhaustion of everything they had survived. Captain Mara Hale stood near the control panel, her armor scratched and burned, her hands trembling slightly now that the danger had passed. When the docking clamps of the Resolute locked around the frigate and the doors opened, a warm wave of light flooded inside. Human medics rushed forward, wrapping blankets around the children and guiding them gently down the ramp. Some of the kids cried with relief, others simply collapsed into the arms of the waiting crew. Mara followed behind them, her legs heavy and slow, as if every step carried the weight of the entire battle. She had survived many missions before, but saving these children and the surprise responsibility of an alien child felt like something deeper, something that would never leave her memory. When she stepped onto the deck of the Resolute, she finally felt the tension in her shoulders ease. The alien child followed close behind her, looking nervous and unsure, glancing around at the humans who stared back with curiosity and caution. The child's voice was soft when they spoke, almost a whisper lost in the noise of the busy hangar. "Your people fight with heart," they said, their eyes reflecting both fear and admiration. Mara knelt slightly so she could look them in the eyes. "We fight for what matters," she replied. "And kids matter no matter where they come from." The child nodded slowly, processing the meaning of her words. They had grown up in a world where strength came from cruelty, where fear was used as a tool, and where children were seen as pieces in a larger machine. The idea that someone would fight for them out of kindness was almost impossible to understand. As the ship moved through space, Mara guided the child to a quiet observation deck. Together they stood before the large window that overlooked the endless spread of stars. Jupiter's wide curve shone in the distance, glowing gold and white, its storms still swirling like ancient spirits. The child touched the glass gently. "When I grow," they said, their voice just a little stronger, I will tell my people what happened here. I will tell them that humans saved me. Not with fear, with care." Mara smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "Maybe if they hear that, things can change. Maybe one day humans and Varkan won't be enemies. Maybe you can help make that happen." The child looked up at her, their expression filled with hope for the first time since she had found them in that broken stasis pod. Outside the window, new ships appeared, human reinforcements arriving late to the battle, but now surrounding the colony to help rebuild it. They brought supplies, engineers, medical teams, and protective fleets to keep Starhaven safe while its people recovered. Humanity was wounded, but not broken. Humanity never broke. Mara felt a swell of pride as she watched crews mobilize, working together to repair what the Varkan had tried to destroy. She knew the fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, drifting in the ruins of the battle, General Thrax was still alive. His rage would grow. His armies would return. But humanity would be ready. They would stand together, protect each other, and rise again just as they always had. And as the sun crept over the curve of Jupiter, painting the sky in warm gold, Mara felt certain that no matter how dark the galaxy became, there would always be a human light fighting through it.